Hello and welcome to At the Redline podcast. My name's Alec Gonzales. I'm a life coach and spiritual director for pastors and leaders in the local church, and especially like to work with business owners, and salespeople is my new favorite. I have Lauren Baker with Perfectus Business something or other.
Consulting.
We'll get to that later, but I always like to sort of start at the beginning. Where were you raised? What was your childhood like?
Yeah.
What was it like being little?
Yeah. So, quick short answer is, man, felt very loved and secure growing up, to be
Nice.
honest with you. So we all have our issues, but honestly, I felt very loved as just a human.
Yeah.
My earliest growing up, I was raised in north central Montana and was born in a town called Glendive. My parents were both from very small towns. It's interesting thinking about my growing up. My dad was a college basketball coach, and my mom was an avid theater and music person. So growing up, I had this great sort of interesting dynamic of mom playing piano, singing, doing things with her family in terms of like trios and stuff, and my dad coaching. And so I had this world where as I grew up, I got to sing and got to participate in those things and grew to love it. I also got to be in sports and grew to love those. And so because I had that solid foundation from my mom and dad just feeling loved, man, I was able to explore both of those sort of other sides of the perspective together. And it was quite an amazing lovely time for me. Honestly, my brother did not do so well. Honestly, that was tougher for him. And the reason for that is my folks got divorced. And that sort of shattered, some of that identity. And so growing up, I did grow up in a broken home from about junior high on. And, I think I felt, like I said, because I felt loved, I was able to go explore. And I think for guys of our generation, Gen X, latchkey kids, the 80s, stranger danger, moms against drunk drivers, all these things that I grew up in that world with lots of freedom, with lots of, as I would say, laissez-faire parenting. So that meant I could make a lot of mistakes, to be honest, but it also meant I got to learn from those. And so I had this foundation growing up of being loved, like feeling that love, and that allowed me to go out and take risk in a sense. And that's kind of grown up in north central Montana. And I did all the things in high school, small school, so you can sing, play football, all those things. By the end of high school, I'll just say this, I definitely fell in love with theater and singing. And so that's definitely what I spent a good chunk of my time doing. After school in Havre, I went to university down in northern Colorado and thought I was going to major in vocal jazz and got into music theory. And I thought, not happening. So I transferred from there, and that would have been in 95 up to Gonzaga University here in Spokane. And so I've been here since then. And my time at university is like a lot of folks our generation. I had a good time. I got 2 degrees, philosophy, political science. I also got high a lot. I also became a drug addict and drank, and it would be very acceptable in terms of the pure. We wouldn't have said anything about each other, but that's what we were, is functionally getting drunk and sleeping around and getting high. And so my college experience was great. Like, I don't, like, in terms of just experientially, I didn't have any deep things saying not to do these or, moral conviction to stay away from those. It was sort of just go, carpe diem, man, go seize the day, suck the marrow out of every bone you can in life because this is it. And so I did that. So that kind of got me to the early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any siblings? Was it a family of just you, or?
Yeah, appreciate that. So I have a younger brother with same mom and dad, a couple years younger than me. He actually lives in Spokane now, which is funny.
Nice.
So growing up, had a brother. We did all the brotherly things. This isn't going to surprise anybody, but getting some boxing gloves and a lot of those moments where my dad would tell us to work it out. But I also had as I mentioned, come from a broken family, but I do have a half sister as well.
Okay.
Who lives in Kansas. And so for myself growing up, I was like 14 and a half when she was born. So big gap. And so it wasn't like we had a long, deep intellectual relationship in a sense, but just a lot of love with her. And actually over time, my younger sister and I, we have some really shared deep values that have brought us together. Yeah.
Nice. Normally I ask about arc of faith. What was the sort of journey into knowing God, and how did that work out over time? And then I always like to give people a chance to really describe, if there is a moment or an event or sort of a season of saying the prayer or having the epiphany or waking up one day going, man, I need to live this out a little better or whatever.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, definitely grew up in a home that we went to church. Both my parents loved Jesus. Both sides of the family kind of going back, especially on my dad's side. So my background is interesting. So my dad's side of the family were immigrants from actually the war going on in the Ukraine now from that area back at the beginning of the 20th century when the communist revolution happened. So they're German speaking Ukrainians that ended up coming to America. And there's literally tens of thousands of us throughout the plains. And so they come from that background, Mennonites, Anabaptist. So that was my dad's side, farming community. You can think of all those things. Not Hutterites. I had to explain that many times. Mennonite is not Hutterite. Those are different. On my mom's side of the family, also very interesting. I believe it's going back 3 generations, might be 4. My great grandfather was buddies with Brigham Young. And so he was one of the original Mormons heading to Utah. And so you can go to Salt Lake City and I can see tippets on that sculpture I've been to. And that's my family heritage on that side. So growing up, deep faith on both sides. My grandfather on my mom's side had left the Mormon faith and became Lutheran. So growing up, I definitely was sort of what we would think of as the evangelical world, Assembly of God, Christian Missionary Alliance, Fifth Avenue Baptist, and some other sorts of First Baptist growing up. So those were kind of my experiences in that evangelical world. Definitely was God was real in the sense of furniture in the room in terms of ideas and that. No personal relationship. So that's my family background. The arc of my faith, like many folks, I went to youth group when I turned 6th grade. That's what you do. And I went and I had a horrible experience at an Assembly of God youth camp where there was speaking in tongues one night. No explanation, no understanding of what's going on. And that experience in 8th grade really just turned me off from anything Christian, to be candid. And so if you would have asked me when I was 18, not practicing, not going to church or anything, if you would have asked me if I was a Christian, I would have said, well, yeah, I'm an American. And I would have really bumped those things together, candidly. So that's kind of the way I left. I went to college and not interested in things of faith, like I kind of mentioned. But I did have a couple really big experiences. One was when I was a junior, we took a group of folks to Sarajevo. We formed a little mission agency, not a Christian mission, just to go do good work. And so if you know anything about the 90s in Bosnia, former Yugoslavia, we went and spent a summer in Sarajevo doing work there. And so that was really, honestly, that was one of the lowest points of my life in the sense of one night I remember vividly just crying just because you're in this beautiful city of Sarajevo, about the size of Spokane, had hosted the '84 Winter Olympics. And it's just devastated. Every green space is a graveyard. Every field is a graveyard. If it's not, then it's full of landmines. Every guy my age, 20-ish to 30 was missing a limb or just looked haunted. And that's where I made a real intellectual decision that there can be no God, that there's no way that this can be okay if there's a benevolent, loving, all-powerful God. There's just no way this can happen. And so I made an intellectual choice at that time, say, the heck with this crap. I'm not even interested in this.
Wow.
And so that, as you can imagine, going home, I said some very uncomfortable things to my parents about their faith, about what they'd raised me in. As I was processing this, I was a jerk, to be candid. I was an arrogant jerk. And so that's kind of how I ended college, sort of at a place of drug addiction. And people would have said I was functioning probably, but I was an addict and no belief in God and really no idea what to do because I knew that intellectually hedonism is just vacuous. I didn't want to kill myself, which I think is an honest intellectual response to nihilism, but we'll leave that for later. You can deal with the comments on that, Alec. And so, God in his mercy let me get to the bottom. There's a series of events that happened, but one that stands out to me, well, really 2. Back home and visited my brother who was just totally on a kick for Jesus at that time. Here's the irony. We're getting high in his basement. And talking about Jesus, and he's like, yeah, man, Jesus is coming back. And I'm like, no, whatever, dude. But, those things kind of stick with you. And so I'm back in Spokane months later, and I'm at just a house party, not a rager. We're pretty mild humans, the group I was with, but we're, drinking some beers, smoking some cigarettes. And this cute redhead was out on the deck with me. Everybody else went in, one of those lulls to get a beer. And her and I were just sitting there, and I'll just never forget. I was trying to think, what could I say, that would engage in conversation. I said something like, how's your soul? Which is funny, Alec, because we've been talking about that today before this. And I just remember she said, how's your soul? And took this big drag off her cigarette. And I just go, huh. looking at her, and she says, I'm working on my relationship with Jesus, trying to figure out what that means. And I just remember going back and taking a drag off my cigarette, which we're both smoking, and going, what the hell does that mean? And so that was sort of a moment. There were other moments as well, because, when you look back, the Lord gives you breadcrumbs. But that was one of those moments where I was like, maybe I should do something with this. Fast forward a couple months later, First Presbyterian Church, a church in Spokane, been here a long time, putting on a class called Alpha, which is out of the UK, a guy named Nicky Gumbel. And they were doing this thing. And here's how this worked is my buddy finished running Bloomsday. At the end of the race, people are handing out little pink flyers that says, what fills the void? And so he provides this to me after he runs. I would never run Bloomsday, but we're chatting later on that evening, laughing about what fills the void and how funny that is. And we decide, well, we're going to go to this event. We're just going to see, maybe make fun of them. And so we go to this event at First Press in the basement, and these lovely humans had made homemade soup and bread. And then they put on a VHS video, no kidding, of a guy with really bad teeth from the UK. And he starts talking about, what's the Bible? And that's the first kind of talk. What's the Bible?
Yeah.
And so the challenge that day, as many of them were, is, some kind of homework. And so is this when you go open the Bible when you get home? So I went home that night and I pulled out the NIV my dad had given me when I was 16 that I never cracked. And I just started reading in the book of Matthew. And I got to Matthew chapter 13. And if you go to chapter 13, verses 44 through 46, there's two little statements there, two little stories. And one is about a man who goes and finds a treasure in a field, and he goes and sells all that he has to get that treasure. And what I realized, what the Lord showed me in that moment was that here I'd been a philosophy and political science major, really wanted to love people, saw the brokenness of the world, tried to, in my 21-year-old mind, figure out what to do, saw the futility, to be candid, of the human effort in some sense, and just broke down and saw that the truth that I'd been looking for, the capital B truth, wasn't in a system or an idea or a set of rules or even a way of living, although those things can come out of it, but was in a person named Jesus who lived 2,000 years ago, and that he miraculously rose from the grave. And the people who were with him, his best friends, went and told everybody. And essentially that's the story that I believe is true. And so from that moment on, opening scripture, my life took a big journey. And so that was when I was about 25 or so, is when all that went down. So I floated for a long time. But the Lord leaves breadcrumbs. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with that program, by the way. We did a little bit of that
nice.
back in the day. Yeah.
Big fan.
It's been a while. Yeah. Nicky Gumbel. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Man, what a
that's
cool
the arc,
story.
brother.
Thanks for sharing that story. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was a good arc. Good story. Man, I don't know you at all.
That's why we do this, brother.
I know. It's so fun. So one of the things I like to talk about is difficult tragedy, trouble, and trauma even, and how it shapes us and creates grit and perseverance and, often teaches us the most important things in life. The worst thing that can happen to me, when Linda was, sick and died and came back, and the miracles and the glory and just trusting God. It was probably the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life, and the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. And so I like to just give people a chance to talk about the difficult stuff that they've gone through and how it's been transformative. You don't have to tell your worst, awfulest story, but if you want to think about a time when trouble led to glory, that's the question.
Yeah. Yesterday I was sitting in service and just thinking about, candidly, we had a couple members of our congregation are moving away. And so we had a time of prayer for them, just lay hands on and just asking God to bless them as they move on. But I was thinking about this suffering and just thanking God for my suffering. And that's not, I don't say that with a lot of joy, but obviously deep down, there's a joy that is beyond this world, but there's a lot of pain there. And so I was thanking God for my suffering. And so, I've been through some things like everybody. It's funny, in my line of business, which we may talk about later, we always say you fail to success, right? The most successful business people fail to success. They're failing all the time, and they just keep going.
Yeah.
And I think in God's economy, he doesn't view suffering the way we do. We want to escape it, numb it, whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, actually, no, I'm with you in the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
That's actually where I'm taking you. If you go look at Psalm 23, he's actually leading his people down there, right? And then out. And so for me, suffering has been, I think it's part and parcel of the Christian faith. I think it's the only thing that makes sense of suffering. As my wife says, Christ has redeemed suffering. I mean, he's not just like fixing it or ending it. He's redeemed it. He's doing
Have you
something
ever
within it.
have you ever heard the term the downward call of God?
Oh, maybe. Tell me more.
Yeah. Well, God is calling us to the downward, to death, to dying,
Yes.
to the death of self.
Yes.
And it's in that falling
Yes.
that often God is below us and we're trying to get out. We're trying to, we're trying to survive up and he's
Yes.
calling us down. And yeah, it's a big part of, real soul formation is embracing
Yes.
hardship and suffering and difficulty and saying, no, this is God's work. The sovereign downward call of God is all through the scripture. I mean, literally
Yes.
all through the
Amen.
scripture. And at the same time, we want to
Yes.
give honor to, hey, there's evil in the world and there's sinful things that are
Yes.
happening. Brokenness is terrible. And God is calling us down, he's calling us into it with him rather than God save us from this trouble. He's like, no,
Yes.
embrace the trouble and embrace me in
Mm.
it. And yeah.
Yeah. So when I think about suffering, that downward call, I think, one of the hardest things about following Jesus is being one of his people, meaning we're in community with each other, and finding a good community can be hard. And I've definitely suffered in that. Not that the community and the people I've been with have been bad people or bad Christians or anything like that, but the suffering in relationship that God calls us to relationship with real people with real issues, including myself. And we got to navigate that together, right? As we walk towards Christ, or when you walk with somebody who doesn't know Christ. Either way, you're navigating those. And I think that's trying to learn to embrace those suffering pieces. And so for me, finding a good body to be a part of has been hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Finding folks willing to dig into those hard places, myself first and foremost. Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I can't relate at all. A little bit of irony there. The other thing I like to talk about is I'm a life coach and a spiritual director, and love to talk to people about how coaching, mentoring has been a part of your life. And not everybody's had a life coach, a real person that they pay to coach them. But most people have a story of someone who's paid attention to them, who saw them and recognized them and then called out and called to them and began a relationship of drawing out and drawing up. And I'm wondering if you have a story like that in your life.
I do. I think, man, so much of life of those people, you probably heard this growing up is, show me the people you hang out with and I'll show you your character. Like, in other words, the people you spend your time with really impact you. Can you rephrase that question one more time for me?
Who's been instrumental in your spiritual growth and your growth as a human, your growth as a businessman? Someone that paid attention. I like the term someone who paid attention to you, someone who noticed you and called out.
So 2 examples. So first one is I worked for an organization called Youth for Christ for a number of years, working with at-risk youth. And there, when I first got that gig, and I don't remember who told me this, but somewhere I knew someone told me, you got to go find somebody who's doing this and like get them to be your mentor. So this is where I sought it out. And what I sought out somebody who was in the role I was in, who'd been doing it a while, some gray hair, some more suffering they've gone through. And so I found a guy and I approached him. So he did not seek me out, but I sought him out and said, hey, as a gentleman out of Oregon, would you just be willing to meet with me once a month? Just a phone call and just help me figure out what the heck I'm doing.
Nice.
And so this guy did. We spent sometimes more than monthly, but he sent me homework, movies to watch, which sounds funny, but he sent me movies to watch. And let's talk about leadership in that. And what does that look like? And we debrief on it. Send me scripture. And so what I learned in that is it's so crucial to find people who are further along than their journey of life than you are, whatever that looks like. And when you go into a specific field where you need some acumen, find somebody who's got the same values and is great at that thing and get them. And don't be afraid to go ask. So I asked Bud. And so I had a great relationship over those 3 years where he was just a sounding board. So
Nice.
he just kind of call it. The other example I'll give in terms of that is where I'm working now, actually. This is a person that I connected with a couple years ago. We stayed in contact, and then she sought me out because we had some deep core values. And she's now taken me under her wing and is teaching me all kinds of lovely things. And what I've learned in my short 50 years is, man, you can't do this journey alone. You need Christ first, but then you need good people around you. And
Yeah.
whether it's ministry or it's work, which that's ministry as well, but we could talk about that. You're always looking to connect people and be in partnership and to love them and to have not only to pour into folks, but to have them pour into you. That's what real partnership is there's a give and a take, a reciprocity, not in a scratch my back, I scratch yours, but in a true, authentic, I care for you. I'm looking for the other. How can I
Yeah.
help you?
Yeah.
Um,
For
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So whatever you
Good.
do, you got to have that, man.
Yeah.
I just am
Good.
convinced of that.
Good. All right. Well, I always like to end on your work. What would be a perfect client?
Yeah.
What's the pain that
Totally.
you tend to solve? If there's someone out there that would be a good client for
Yeah.
you, I'd
Totally.
love you to make a pitch and just talk about who you are as
Yeah.
a business owner or a businessman and as pitch artist. I want you to pitch.
Yeah. So real easy, man. Honestly, we help entrepreneurs get out of their own way. And what that looks like is a lot of folks we work with, they have done well in business. They've got the acumen. Think of a woman with a truck, and they grow the business to a place where they need help. And so what we do is we help owners figure out strategy. What does it look like to go from a one person in a truck to having, say, 3 to 5 employees? There are different things you're going to have to consider. Most entrepreneurs, I love them, but they start out on their gut and on their own intellect and they grit stuff out, which is beautiful and awesome, but you're going to have to grow to a place where you lead a team. And so what we do at Perfectus is we help folks get an understanding of where their business is at. We do an evaluation, which comes back with a report on things we can work on. That could be leadership skills. It could be hiring. It could be just getting into the guts of your cash flow, how revenue is different than profit. And then we also help folks figure out, what am I doing with this business? I'm getting close to retiring. I don't know what to do. I want to give it to my family, I think. And so we help folks sort of navigate that legacy piece to leave well. So really, it's those folks at the beginning who've done well but are trying to grow, those businesses who have done really well and want to scale and just need some assistance. And then those folks who are ready to sort of leave the business for whatever reason, we help them leave well, whether that's passing on to family, it is selling it to private equity or VC. I mean, we're agnostic about that. I have my own personal opinions, but we'll help that business owner do what they want. And that's what we do is we help business owners figure out how to run their business. Because the truth is, most folks can do their business, they can fix a thing, but the business skill set itself they don't have. And so we come along and teach folks to do that. As an example, we're doing a 6-week, what we call a Profit First. You can go Google it. Class here starting May 11th. And that's basically taking entrepreneurs, business owners, and saying, why doesn't your business make money? Why is it that this formula that we've had for who knows how many generations now, which is sales minus expenses equals profit? And at the end of the year, I see all these entrepreneurs that have no profit. They don't know when they're going to pay themselves. And so this class is kind of flipping that script and saying, what if we take the same numbers and said sales minus profit equals expenses? And as a business owner, how would that change the way you allocate to yourself? So those are the things we do is we want owners to succeed. We want them to pay themselves, take a vacation, a great referral for yourself or someone else out there. If you haven't taken a vacation in 2 years, please come talk to me. If you're thinking about selling the business, it takes a couple years to get it ready. We love to have those kind of conversations.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I could come sell for you. That is exactly what I would do. Man, that
Yeah.
sounds like
Oh,
fun.
dude, man, I can't believe I get paid to go help people make their business go,
No,
brother.
that
It's a
sounds
great thing.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's too bad you don't need someone to do cold calling for you. That would be fun. All right. What's the main pain you feel like you're
So
solving?
good.
I mean, I was listening to a guy named Donald Miller,
Oh, yeah.
Story Brand.
Mm.
I don't know if you know this guy, but he's amazing. And he says nobody buys anything unless they've got pain for you to solve. What's the pain that most likely is generated or is being generated that you
Mm.
can come along and solve?
Yeah, man. Pain point is man, it's so good. I never get a day off. You don't ever take time off. The pain
Yeah.
point is it's time. It is, I don't have money at the end of the month.
Yeah.
I paid a ton. met with a guy here a couple weeks ago. He's paying his taxes again. He has no money.
Yeah.
He planned poorly. He made
He
a lot of
made a
money
bunch
last
of
year.
money,
He made a bunch of money.
but he doesn't have any money.
And he
Yeah.
never paid himself first.
Yeah.
So really, it's that time back for an owner, figuring out your money so that you're not just begging and barely scraping by.
Yeah.
And then it's figuring out what the heck is a strategy. Most business owners are just kind of going day to day to day, which that's normal, man. You're
Yeah.
out there grinding.
That's good.
We just help folks get some strategy. It's sort of, you got to be down here in the forest, but you got to look up as a business owner. Here's the
Nice.
forest. We'll come down and look at the trees. We're going to bang down here for a bit. But we help clients put their head up. Where are we going? And hopefully over time, if it makes sense, they may step out of being in the business itself and just running it.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Contact information. We'll put it right down here. What's your phone number, email, website? How does someone contact Lauren Baker?
Yes. So you can get me, easiest is probably LinkedIn, Lauren Baker for Perfectus in Spokane. You can also go to our website, profectusbusiness.com. That's PROFECTUS business.com. That's a great way to connect. But LinkedIn's probably the best, to be candid with you, because I'll get right back to you and we can have a conversation.
Nice. We'll put that right here in the banner. It'll look awesome.
Standing.
Hey, thanks for coming on my podcast.
Yeah.
All right. I'm Alec Gonzales, Coaching The Redline. If you know someone who's leading a church who could use a coach or a spiritual director, I'd love an invitation or what do you call that? Recommendation. And if you pastor a church, give me a call, 509-999-3305. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.